you were in a reality that was like a cardboard box and you thought it was, had legs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the therapist says, well, this was a relationship problem. Like what, let's look at it because both of you were contributing. And
Right.
it could not be more gutting when you hear it from the perspective of I'm getting blamed for the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
Welcome to Sleeping Around, where we offer a peek behind the curtain of modern sex and relationship therapy and research, bringing you insights and conversations otherwise reserved for the therapy room. I'm your host, Alayna Joy, a Master's of Counseling Psychology student, content creator, and lifelong sex and relationship nerd. Enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Sleeping Around. Today, we are talking about betrayal trauma, specifically recovery or repair after cheating, after infidelity. Can couples heal after betrayal of this kind? What role does each partner play? What steps can be taken? Why do people cheat? These are all questions that I discuss with today's guest, Rebecca Stone, LCSW. Rebecca is a somatic trauma therapist and couples therapist. She's the founder of Brooklyn Somatic Therapy. She is certified in the Hakomi method and emotion-focused couples therapy and has advanced training in attachment-focused EMDR, family constellations, and somatic experiencing. And her specialty is guiding individuals and couples through initiatory rupture, especially around infidelity. And boy, oh boy, does she bring her expertise to this conversation. This discussion felt so fruitful that this is one of those episodes that I'm going to be sharing the whole extended cut with all of you. Usually the final 10 or 15 minutes with each guest where we answer audience questions is posted exclusively to Patreon. And for $10 a month, you can access every single one of these extended cut episodes, which is every episode. Every single episode of Sleeping Around has this bonus content at the end that is available only to patrons. But for today's episode, I wanted to share that extended cut with all of you. And if you're interested in accessing the rest of the extended cut episodes, patreon.com/Alayna Joy, ALAYNA Joy. It'll be linked in the show notes and the description. Thank you to all of my patrons who support this work over there. I won't keep you any longer. Without further ado, enjoy the episode. What inspired you to start working with specifically betrayal trauma, couples who are healing post-affair? How did we get here?
In my own history, my grandfathers on both sides cheated on my grandmas. And I knew that from a young age. And it was like never exactly told to me, but it was in the air. It was what I kind of had picked up from different conversations around funerals. And I remember when I was a kid being really afraid of sex and sexuality, and specifically men and male sexuality, because of the way that I felt like the trauma was just living in my intergenerational field. And so in terms of my own healing, my own reflection on intergenerational trauma, and then my own learning as a therapist around affair recovery, there was really a shift for me around what is possible and what affairs are really about. And it was just something that I was always scared of myself, growing up, like, oh God, am I going to be in a relationship where that happens to me because of the air that I was in my family system. When I started as a couples therapist, it was fascinating. It was beautiful. I really loved Esther Perel's book, The State of Affairs. And I just found myself like wanting more and more and more experience with it. And in the beginning, it was really hard. Because I don't think most therapists are trained to understand the level of trauma that happens for a betrayed partner and how it needs to be addressed first and foremost. And most couples therapists are trained to just kind of treat it as a rupture, where you look at like, okay, well, what led to the rupture in the in the system, in the dynamic. Let's have everybody take responsibility. It's the negative cycle that caused the infidelity.
Right.
And that is
Right.
so triggering for the partner who has just been betrayed in the worst possible way. I had one of my clients say to me, my husband died. The love of my life died. And I survived and I healed. And then I remarried and my second husband cheated on me. Nothing compares to the pain and the trauma of infidelity. Death is much easier. And couples therapists especially are just not trained to understand that.
The piece that you said about exactly how kind of your traditional couples therapist is trained to see this sort of betrayal trauma as like a rupture. And there's almost an implicit blaming, or like there's a piece in there somewhere around the betrayed partner has also contributed.
Exactly.
And I'm thinking about this in the context of how you named it as a trauma, right? Not just, oh, this is a rupture in a relationship and like, what can we do to come back together? But this is a trauma that this person has experienced, and the implications of treating the traumatized person as if they played a role in producing their own trauma. When you think about it like that.
Exactly. It's extra violence. It's more damage. To have a therapist, a clinician say, from my clinical, objective, professional lens.
Oh, you're giving me goosebumps. Rebecca, we're 5 minutes in.
I know. It's really powerful. It's very powerful work. But I mean, can you imagine, like, your entire world has been completely shattered? It makes me cry.
Yeah.
Shattered. The person you trusted the most in the world has basically made you feel like nothing, like you don't matter, and everything that you had is wrong and didn't exist. Okay? Like you were in a reality that was like a cardboard box, and you thought it was, had legs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the therapist says, well, this was a relationship problem. Like, what, let's look at it, because both of you were contributing. And it could not be more gutting when you hear it from the perspective of, I'm getting blamed for the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
Yes. I mean, there's two kind of big questions that I have that come from that, and I'm sure we'll get to both of them. The first being, can couples heal from this level of trauma? Maybe we go there first. And then this is all the perspective of the betrayed partner. I'd also, what's the perspective or what's the kind of role of the partner who cheated? But can couples heal?
Yes. And I think this is a larger question than just can couples heal. It's how do we hold trauma in a more general sense? Can we recover from the most painful things? Does trauma break us, or does it make us stronger? And I believe in the most fundamental way that we all have the capacity to heal from trauma with the right support. And the trauma is meant to strengthen us if we allow it to. And what's beautiful is that not only does each partner in the couple have to do their own work to strengthen themselves and heal themselves, but also the relationship can get stronger than ever. Because so much deep work is getting done, so much deep core work is getting done to heal attachment styles, to heal the underlying dynamics that were always there, that were keeping partners in a negative cycle. So it's not to say that there wasn't a negative cycle. Every partnership has a negative cycle. Some partnerships are more vulnerable to cheating than others because of the cheating partner's trauma and the way that it leaves them more vulnerable to self-soothing through other relationships or sexual encounters. And usually it's an avoidant attachment strategy. Usually, in my experience, the partner who cheated, if we're not talking about sex addiction, but we're talking about one affairs or, two affairs, long-term, short-term, and sex addiction is actually pretty similar in terms of a coping strategy with more of an avoidant attachment style. So couples can heal. And when we talk about and look at the cheating partner's trauma and what leads them to cheat,
Yes.
because this is an essential part of whether couples can heal. When we understand avoidant attachment, the strategy, the style, how it came to be in childhood, the research shows when the avoidantly attached adult was a baby, they were the baby that cried the most. They weren't born with avoidant attachment. They were actually highly sensitive and they did not get the soothing that they needed. And the research shows that in school, at home, they were the loudest criers and nobody knew how to soothe them. And so they grow up in a world where they have to learn to stop feeling feelings, stop crying. Don't even register that I have a need. Because if I have a need, the most distressing thing is to feel the overwhelm and stay alone in it and watch as everybody around me is just overwhelmed by me and can't actually figure out how to give me what I need. So they're operating from a core belief system that says your needs are too much and a problem. There's something fundamentally wrong with you. You're a burden. Your feelings are burdensome. Just stop feeling. And so then when there's a negative cycle in the couple's partnership and the cheating partner is sent back to all of those deepest fears about themselves, their strategy is don't feel, don't show needs, don't have needs. There's something wrong with you for needing more than you're getting, for being upset. And so they stuff it and they stuff it and they stuff it. And then finally they can't stuff it anymore. And somebody outside makes them feel the vulnerability of like, oh, they see me. They can meet me. They see my goodness. They see that I'm not too much. And this triangulation and this compartmentalization happens. And so the healing work that needs to be done on the other end is that the cheating partner really needs to heal that avoidant attachment wound. The deepest layers of that wound that tell them that their feelings and their needs are a problem, and to help them start learning to self-soothe so that they trust that they can show up and actually share with their partner. Here's what I need. Here's what I feel. Here's where that comment sent me. Here's what I'm scared of. And so then when that happens, and the partner has done all of their work on their own historical wounding, and they're processing the layers of trauma that got exacerbated because of the infidelity, but are actually have been with them since childhood. When they strengthen and they feel more resilient and in love with themselves as ever, and then their partner heals their avoidant attachment strategy, the relationship is stronger than it's ever been. They are more connected. Their communication is better than ever. They understand each other in their full vulnerability in the way that they never have before. And a lot of partners say to me, I feel like I've finally gotten the partner I always wanted.
Relationships being potentially stronger after the infidelity is not something you hear a lot, but it makes sense based on the kind of individual work that you're talking about. And how it's unfortunate is an understatement, but it would be unfortunate that the impetus for that work would be something like infidelity or like such a kind of betrayal. You can see how couples could come back from it better than ever. And I also love kind of the way you've described this as we're keeping the idea of a negative cycle in the partnership because they exist, like you said, in every partnership. But it's like the combination of the negative cycle and the avoidant attachment or the kind of wounds from the deep old wounds in the cheating partner. It's that combination that leads to the infidelity or leads to the betrayal, not it's the behavior of the non-cheating partner. We're talking about the root of it and how it happens without saying, and it's your fault too.
Exactly. And it's in the attachment world, I think we can get really hazy about saying, well, because I want secure attachment, you're responsible for my feelings and behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, couples therapists are a little bit taught that, like, well, if you want secure attachment, your job is really to provide safety. And of course, we want to provide safety, but nobody is responsible for someone else's abusive
Mm-hmm.
behavior, period. And infidelity is abusive behavior. You know, a lot of people hear that word abuse and think like I'm pathologizing and I'm judging, and I'm not. People are capable of healing
Mm-hmm.
from every kind of issue. And abusive behavior is a symptom of trauma. I'm not trying to demonize, but let's just call it what it is and not make someone else responsible for a person's really unhealthy choice.
If you get pushback against calling infidelity an abusive behavior, you're again kind of minimizing in a way or dismissing the experience of the betrayed partner and the trauma that
Right.
that caused. So what happens kind of first? Like, let's say we have a discovery or a disclosure of an affair. Talk us through what generally happens for each partner.
So I believe that because the betrayal is so traumatic, that diving right into couples work is premature, and that each partner needs their own space to do their own work. So the betrayed partner is unpacking all of the deepest wounds and fears that have gotten kicked up for them around this betrayal, like I'm not lovable, I'm not enough, I don't deserve, I was too much, I can't trust myself, I failed, you know, whatever is the loudest for them.
Mm-hmm.
And we unpack that and we bridge that back to their childhood wounding. And we understand, how is this vulnerability in you already there? So that the lens that you're reading the betrayal through can get healed. Because objectively, what's true is that your partner probably would have enacted this no matter who they were with because of their own wounding.
That might be a tough pill to swallow, I can imagine.
It's very hard. It's really, really hard.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of work for them to be able to say, this had nothing to do with me. This had nothing to do with me. There was nothing I could have done to prevent it. And usually that's true. We treat this as a negative cycle. You know, the negative cycle is the underlying thing. And sometimes that's true 90% and 100%. And sometimes it's true 20%. And the actual thing that drives infidelity is intergenerational trauma and the fact that someone is reenacting what their parent did. You know, so that happens a lot. And there's also, when we think about what an affair is, it's a triangle. If someone was triangulated as a child and brought two into their parents' dynamic and was parentified, or there was emotional incest, they're used to a triangle. And so people are constantly just reenacting the triangles that they grew up with. To try, it's basically like the Freudian idea of the compulsion to repeat the trauma. I'm trying to make meaning, I'm trying to make sense of like what this thing was that is unprocessed in my unconscious. And so I need to kind of reenact it to gain mastery. And what's crazy is that a lot of the partners who I work with who have cheated say, you know, my dad cheated on my mom or my mom cheated on my dad. It was the most traumatic thing I could ever imagine. It destroyed my family. You know, my siblings and I were separated and lived in different houses. And I hated the parent who cheated for that. I was so angry at them.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, here they are 30 years later doing the exact same thing. And what's crazy is that happened to one of my grandfathers. He cut his father off. He didn't go into business with him. He didn't talk to him for years, and was in love with my grandma. They had like a 70-year love affair, loved each other. And he cheated on her when they had young kids.
You mentioned compartmentalization earlier, and this idea of, in this triangulation for the cheating partner, there is like this compartmentalization that happens. How do you work with that in terms of the betrayed partner relearning to trust themselves and also relearning to trust their partner, a piece of that trust would be, how do I trust that they love and care about me when they did this?
Right. And I trusted them while they were doing this.
Ooh, yeah.
That's the worst part. So this is where, and this is why I fucking love the work so much. I think it's just so beautiful. Is that this is an opportunity, and this is why I'm in it, to re-educate people about what is untrustworthy, what is bad behavior, what is abuse. To all be centered around when there is unconscious stuff that we don't know how to process. When we have blind spots because of unprocessed trauma, that is what makes us untrustworthy. That is what makes us abusive, because we are trying to figure out how to make peace with this thing that is outside of our awareness. And so we reenact it. People are abusive because they were abused. The pain is outside of their awareness. They don't know how to hold it. They perpetuate the abuse and take it out on somebody else instead of learning how to digest it. And it's the same exact thing with affairs. So my answer always is to the betrayed partner, you did nothing wrong by not tracking this. It is not your job to be able to see someone's blind spot before they do. But the way that you know that they're trustworthy is that they are taking control of their unconscious shit. And they have self-awareness and a resilience and an ability to process pain that they never had before. That is what grows us into mature, wise beings. And that is how we ensure that we stop perpetuating harm.
How does the betrayed partner know that that's happening?
You can see it. You feel such a shift in the way that the cheating partner talks, in terms of sharing their insight, sharing their pain, feeling their pain for the first time ever. A lot of the cheating partners I work with are also victims of sexual abuse, so they're reenacting the sexual abuse from a more empowered place by choosing, by not having it be with someone who's power over, and so when they see their partner actually hold, whoa, the amount of shame and self-hatred that I've been holding, the amount that I've been blaming myself for this thing that happened to me, that then caused me to act out in really harmful ways. I see it, I'm healing it, and I'm showing you my emotional range in a way that you've never seen before, because I'm in touch with it in a way that I didn't even know was possible.
This is the piece you were saying earlier around communication better than ever afterward, kind of these shifts that can happen.
Exactly.
So in this process, we're speaking about the cheating partner's kind of responsibility to do their own work, unpack their history, their past trauma, their own attachment wounds and communication style, and all of that. Where does forgiveness, where does the moving forward come in, and how does one work toward that?
I don't know if you've heard of family constellations work, but I integrate it in a lot to what I do. And it's basically a way to look at intergenerational trauma and the way that our lineage impacts us genetically, energetically, psychologically. And a lot of the healing work that I do for both partners is having a wider lens around what they're currently going through and how it's actually some kind of reenactment of previous generations. But I bring all of this in because the founder of that work says we never ask people to forgive, because to forgive means I'm above you and I'm offering you something from a self-righteous stance. What we ask people to do is just to accept reality. Accepting reality is what brings us peace. And I just think that that's a really nice way to frame, because forgiveness, it's an interesting word and it's a lot of pressure for people. I have to forgive. What's wrong with me that I'm still angry? As opposed to, I accept the reality and how it's impacted me, I'm strong enough to withstand the reality. And I understand that what caused this was based in your wounding. And that can either lead to reconciliation if the partner is doing the work to prove trustworthiness, like we talked about. They need to really be committed to repair, full repair, which includes transparency and really showing up for their partner and their partner's pain and doing the deeper healing work and, being available for that kind of reconciliation. And sometimes the partner just doesn't have it in them in this lifetime. Like, it's just not going to happen. They don't have the ego strength. And that is what it is. But no matter what, the betrayed partner's job is to accept reality and to make peace with, like, this is who you are. It's not my fault that I didn't catch it. There was nothing wrong with me. Like, none of us can see blind spots. None of us. Until we're hit in the face with them. And that's just reality of what it means to be human.
Mm-hmm. I'm putting myself in the shoes of the betrayed partner, somebody listening to this, and I'm like, okay, even if I can accept the reality of what has happened, I can accept why this has happened based on my partner's past trauma and what they're bringing to the table, and I can accept the impact that it's had on me, and how do I move forward without this sort of hypervigilance and fear around what if it happens again?
Such a good question. That's what all of them struggle with. And the answer is trauma processing. I do EMDR and somatic techniques to really work with the nervous system and help them relearn that their bodies are safe. And ultimately, what I do at the end of my groups and my retreats is I have the betrayed partner imagine that it does happen again.
Oof. Oh.
Because I need them to walk away trusting I'm strong, I'm resilient, and I will survive, and I know what I would do.
Right.
And from this empowered place, it's not personal. It's just really, really clear that they are sick and that they're not capable of working on this.
Right. Right. If it happens again, you mean?
If it happens again. So, and it's kind of like working on a phobia, like in EMDR. Like, it's like this future fear. And that's how we have to treat it, is like, you will survive it. And you've gotten through this far. And look how far you've come already. You have to remind your body that it doesn't have to be hypervigilant to keep you safe. You are safe, even if the worst thing happens.
Simultaneously, the betrayed partner is working on, they're obviously in therapy, doing this kind of deeper work, but let's say these two partners are still living together.
Right.
Do you have any tips or thoughts on kind of what that outside of the therapy room work could look like between the two of them?
The thing that's the hardest about the process of reconciliation when they're really trying to make it work and they're each doing their own work is that usually the discovery doesn't happen through disclosure. It happens through discovery. And when the discovery happens, the person who cheated is trying their best to mitigate all the damage, and they lie and they minimize and they don't tell the full truth. And so often the betrayed partner's deepest trauma from all of this is how much they were lied to and gaslit to their faces. And it can go on for a long time. And even when, 2 years in, 3 years in, when they start doing work with me, the cheating partner is still withholding some information. And it's not because that information is that important. They just feel like anything's going to tip them over the edge. They're going to leave me, like, why do they have to know more? It's not even important. And for the betrayed partner, there becomes this really intense, obsessive hypervigilance around, I have to know everything to make sense of the story.
Yeah. And
the needing to know everything to make sense of the story, part of it is like, of course, you deserve to know what happened. Like, it's part of your life. It's part of your story. Like, how long was it? What was the nature of the relationship? But in order to answer deeper underlying questions that are usually around Are you hiding that you were actually in love with this person? Are you
Mm.
hiding that, were you lying to me because you're protecting the relationship because it matters that much to you and you still can't tell me the truth? Are you hiding because I'm just not a priority? And so they think that the way to get those answers is through the nitpicking of details. And so they'll ask the same questions over and over and over and over again, also because they've been lied to and the cheating partner has sketchy answers. And so they get stuck in this terrible dynamic of like the betrayed partner grills, the cheating partner is frozen and like shut down and confused and shamed, and it's a disaster. It's a complete disaster of a cycle. And so my advice to both when I'm doing the separate work is the betrayed partner needs to get clear on why they're asking and what they actually need to know. And they need to turn those grilling questions, EFT, emotion focused couples therapy, into what are my underlying fears? And can I share that instead? I'm so scared that you're not telling me everything because X. Can you reassure me? I'm so scared that, you don't remember the timeline because you're hiding that this was a much more important relationship to you and that it was much longer. That's my deepest fear. This is what it means about me, that you've lied to me like this. And that is actually a constructive, reparative conversation where the cheating partner can reassure, can offer reassurance. But when the grilling happens, the cheating partner is on the defensive, the betrayed partner is enraged and terrified. Nobody's actually speaking their feelings, and it's just a very toxic dynamic. In the work with the cheating partner, the work is really about how they work with their shame and their shutdown in these moments. So when your partner's grilling you, when they're calling you names, when they're making you feel so terrible for what you've done, how do you trust in your own goodness, remind yourself that you're a good person and that it was your trauma spin that caused harm, so that you can show up and reassure them?
For the betrayed partner, it's really trying to understand what is the need that I'm trying to have met through these questions. And for the cheating partner, it's almost like a how can I stay with myself during my partner
Exactly.
sharing the ways that I've hurt them, the insecurities
Right.
that they have. And the reassurance piece, on the one hand, we've been talking about with attachment and, relational healing, your partner is not your responsibility, or and vice versa, your partner's not responsible for you and for your emotions and the way that you're feeling. This almost sounds like an exception to the rule, where in a way you're saying that the cheating partner has a responsibility to reassure.
Yes, and I don't actually think it's an exception. So what I say to my betrayed partners also is it goes both ways. You were not responsible for his acting out and his abuse. He's not responsible for the way that you're internalizing this betrayal. You have to own your own emotional landscape, and that the trauma is now inside of your system, and that your system is unique. And every couple falls into this dynamic of like, you broke me, you fix me.
Yes.
And that is not a healthy place to start the work.
You broke me, you fix me. The alternative,
nobody can break me. Nobody can break me.
Nobody can break me.
I decide how I respond to adversity and pain. And any trauma that lands inside of me is now mine. And so when the betrayed partner is sharing with vulnerability, I am so afraid that they are taking responsibility for their emotional experience and sharing feelings, as opposed to, you broke me, you're a piece of shit, whatever it is that would be said. And so it's a real shift in like, we have to be responsible for our
reactions, responses, landscape. Yeah.
This is a hard wake-up call. It teaches people that they have to grow up so quickly into such intense emotional maturity if they want to survive this. But that's why I love the work so much.
You're speaking from such a more empowered place. Like
Exactly.
rather than you broke me, you fix me, it's nobody can break me. And there's also a piece in there around nobody can break me and I'm choosing to stay here. I'm choosing
Right.
to be here. And in that choice, there needs to be a commitment to doing your own work. And that's
100%.
not saying, like, that's different than us saying this is somehow the responsibility or fault of the betrayed partner. But there is a piece around if you're choosing to try to work toward repair, you're both trying to work toward repair. And it's an interesting mindset shift to move away from the, well, you did this, so you fix it.
Exactly. Like they need to prove their recovery, right? They need to prove that they deserve a second chance and that they are moving into integrity, trustworthiness, healing for anybody to, for the partner to want to stay. But, it's like when we think about our parents and the trauma that they inflicted on us, if we stayed in a stance of you broke me, you fixed me for the rest of our lives, we'd have serious personality disorders.
Right.
So, like it's just the truth. It's like the people that cause us trauma are not actually capable, nor do they have the power to fix the way that we have internalized and introjected the pain. We are the only ones. And you're right. It's so empowering. It's so empowering to feel like nobody breaks me. Nobody fucking breaks me. I heal.
It's like the coming back toward your partner after being betrayed, moving back toward, on the one version with the you broke me, you fix me, we kind of have this, like you said, you're a piece of shit, you ruined my life, you did X, Y, Z. And then on the other hand, we almost have like a self-advocacy. It's not attack, it's here are my needs. I'm saying this with my full chest. This is my experience based on what you did. This is how it's impacted me. And now this is what I need. Like it's kind of, it has the same goal, but there's just a different energy.
Exactly. It's like ultimately my adult self is advocating and holding the mic for my inner wounded child, as opposed to my inner wounded child tantruming and say, you discarded me, now pick me up and make me feel better.
So much to chew on in all of this. You mentioned groups. What would this look like in a group setting?
So because there's so much stigma on both sides, being the betrayer and being the betrayed, I find that it is so powerful and half of the healing to do this work in groups. So the work that I do with the partners separately is in group work, where we do group EMDR and somatic exercises, but it's mostly always in group settings, either in virtual groups or in retreats. And it's so powerful for people who feel so broken for one reason or the other, depending on which experience you're in, to feel like, wow, I have been blaming myself so much and so terrified of speaking this to anybody because of how they'll see me. And now I show up with a group of 10 or 12 other people and everyone's in the same boat and we're all pretty awesome. Like we're all good people and nobody deserved this. Or like, I've been feeling like such a pariah because I cheated. I feel disgusting. I can't look at myself. But then I see all these other humans and they're good people too. I must not be so bad. Maybe I can have more self-compassion. There's also something contagious about group healing. Like I find that the healing just moves at a faster pace. Like people get less stuck when they're hearing others talk about like, I went back into my childhood trauma memory, and then Superwoman showed up and she just like beat the bullies up and, blah, 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 blah. Like this whole awesome rescripting. And it influences everybody else who hear it. And then they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to bring Superwoman in, or like, I'm going to bring in my resources and rescript. And so it just feels like there's so much momentum toward resilience and power and healing in group work.
It's the antithesis of the shame piece. Like the shame of being cheated on, and maybe even the shame of being cheated on and then choosing to stay.
Totally. It's so hard.
Yeah, I can see that not being viewed as an acceptable choice by a lot of people. And then being the cheating partner and the shaming and judgment that would come from that.
I mean, most of the betrayed partners that I've worked with say, like, we haven't told anybody.
Yeah.
Or like, I told one person, I'm so scared of being judged. And also, forget about this, the fear of other people's judgment. How do I even look at myself in the mirror? I never thought that I would stay if this happened to me.
Yeah.
And then it happened, and I never expected it to happen. He was the most, or she was the most trustworthy person. We were so in love, and I'm staying, and I don't know how to forgive myself for this choice.
Yeah. And then to be surrounded by other people who are having this same experience. I can see how that would be so healing. For everybody listening and watching, all of Rebecca's group work, her practice, all of that will be linked in the description in the show notes. If anybody wants more, this is kind of my final big question. Is there one thing that you wish everybody knew?
Another reason that I got into this work is because when I graduated from social work school, I was really passionate about criminal justice reform. And there was a program in New York State that worked with people who were incarcerated for murder. The basic tenet or principles of restorative justice is that within all of us, we hold the capacity for both victim and perpetrator. The two go hand in hand. None of us is beyond the capacity of perpetration. And the sooner that we can hold that we are always both, and that what determines how much we are of one or the other is only how much trauma we've endured, how much trauma we're carrying for our ancestors, then we can be so much more accepting of reality and wise about seeing people in their trauma spins and pain. And so I worked in these groups in New York State prisons, helping, it happened to be a men's prison, but helping these men really unpack their own trauma history and what led them to a life where they could take someone else's life. And when they unpacked their own trauma, they could hold with true deep empathy, really for the first time ever, the harm that they caused. And they'd been in prison for like 20 years, 30 years, denied parole multiple times, had never really looked at the harm. And this group allowed that to happen. I tell this story because ultimately what drives me the most in this work is restorative justice. It's bringing together the classic perpetrator and the classic victim and saying none of us is just one or the other. And when we can hold that in our fullest humanity, that both of us are equally capable of causing pain and both of us are equally capable of healing, the work is so much faster and we are such wiser beings for it and so much more resilient.
Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with us today. Where can people find you if they want more?
So affairrecoverycoach.com is a good place to start. I also run a group practice in Brooklyn. So if you're in New York State and you just really want a great EMDR or somatic therapist and my approach resonates, you can work with one of my team members who are all awesome. And they're at brooklynsomatictherapy.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here today. We're going to jump over into the Patreon exclusive version where Rebecca's going to answer a bunch of your audience questions.
Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. We're in the Patreon version now. Thanks for being here. So I got this question a lot. Do you believe in once a cheater, always a cheater?
Great question. I do not. And
Surprise. After our
what
conversation. You're like, yes, I do. I do believe that.
The only reason that somebody would continue to cheat is because they do not have the capacity to hold and process their trauma. And so they need this kind of coping mechanism that's like an addiction to keep feeling a basic sense of okay in their bodies. Which to me is also the same reason that people get stuck in alcoholism or any addiction, is like, if we don't heal the root, which is looking at the trauma that's causing the need for this kind of escape or self-soothing, then no coping strategy will change if the root is unhealed. But when we can heal the root and we can really look at what is driving the behavior, it can change so fast. And most often what I've seen is, as soon as someone is caught, the consequence of being caught is so devastating and so painful that the pattern just shifts overnight. The bottom has fallen out. When they're caught and they cheat again, it's because they're so compartmentalized, fragmented, dissociated. There's so much trauma that they don't have the capacity to look at and hold, that they can just keep doing something from a complete dissociative state. But I usually feel like I can tell when I'm working with somebody, if they're doing the processing and they're feeling the feelings and the pain of the childhood wounding. That's what tells me they're actually learning how to self-soothe, hold all of the pain themselves. When they're too dissociative and they don't feel anything and it looks like they're going through the motions, I don't really feel anything, or yeah, I see this, and it's like they're so cut off from the wound. That's what makes them, I think, more vulnerable to more cheating.
So there is a sort of, not litmus test, but there is a sense in your work of healing versus the potential for more cheating.
Yeah. And I would say 97% of the people that I work with heal and have the capacity to do the deeper work.
That is so contrasted to what you hear, conversation in the zeitgeist around cheating. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
I have somebody here who asked, do you think that if the betrayed partner, they said cheatee, would get a hall pass, would that make it even?
I don't think that it ever works that way. And I don't think it's ever about sex.
Ooh.
It's not actually about sex. It's about, I'll do anything to feel better about myself. And either I have a relationship to sex and sexuality where that's historically been the case. Like, a lot of people will say, my life was falling apart as a teenager. Shit was so hard. And I used masturbation to escape. And so now sex plays that same escape role, but it's with another person. It started out with porn and then there was an affair partner. But it's never actually about I just have so much desire for this human being and I just need sex with them because the sex with them is so much better than it is with my partner. That is just 99.5% not what I hear. What I hear is the sex was never as good as with my partner. I couldn't even orgasm with my affair partner. I felt like I owed them this to get their validation hits and to feel liked by them. It was transactional.
This is so...
A lot, yeah.
I guess it's just, you think it's like what you see in movies and
movies,
TV.
yeah.
Yeah, it's this kind of passion-driven experience.
Did you ever see the movie A Walk on the Moon?
No.
It's so beautiful, and it's so many amazing sex scenes with this woman in the 60s and her affair partner. And, I'm sure that also exists. I'm sure that there are ways that we compartmentalize ourselves to get love with the person who matters the most to us. And so we're not as free, we're not as liberated. We have to hold back our authenticity to stay connected if that was our childhood wound. And so it's possible that an affair could represent the opposite. You get to be free, you get to experiment, you get to just throw yourself in fully without fear because the
Yeah.
person doesn't matter to you.
Yeah.
But that's what's important. It's like affairs are always with someone who doesn't really matter. And that's what makes it such a powerful escape route. I can be more emotional. I can share feelings because this person doesn't matter. They're not my primary attachment figure. If I'm rejected by them, I don't really care that much. Sometimes maybe the sex is good. Sometimes the cheating partner is in limerence with the affair partner and they make up this whole story about like they really get me. And they belittle and deprioritize and, demean the partner that they're with because they start blaming them and projecting onto them all the ways that they haven't been able to get their needs met. And instead of saying, oh, wow, this is my own strategy and my own shit, this is because they never made space for me. All of that also happens.
Yeah.
But what I've heard most is actually like, I was terrified of getting abandoned, like rejected and abandoned because it's my deepest wound. We were like in a hard time. And this person just happened to come along who like worshiped me and like made me feel good.
Right.
And I knew I didn't love them. I knew they weren't really that important. But I just took the validation hits because it kind of kept me surviving.
I'm wondering if there's a piece around that scenario, the kind of first scenario you're describing, where it maybe is more desire driven or, passion driven or whatever, that also coming crashing down once the discovery is made, kind of that compartment is shattered and then seen in a new light. And then also the couples that you're seeing are couples who have decided we want to try and work on this. And they're both coming to the room, right, to try and work on it. So maybe there's a distinction to be made just for the listener or for the viewer around
the subset of people, right?
Yeah, like you discover your partner cheats. And I don't think what you're saying is that 99.5% of those people have this sort of reparative response. Maybe an important kind of first question is this person willing to take responsibility, take accountability for their actions and work on it?
Right. Yeah, I would say the couples that I see are the couples who are the most in love and kind of shocked
Yeah,
that this could happen. You know? So, and that doesn't mean that initially there's not like the cheating partner is still not in limerence and still kind of not wanting to fully let go of the affair because of what the affair represents. But ultimately, at the end of the day, their joint narrative is we always had an amazing marriage and this is shocking.
Right.
And we had great sex for the most part.
What are some signs or red flags that a couple would be better off separating or is likely going to separate in the future? I think people are probably wondering, they're probably thinking, okay, I've discovered this cheating. How do I know whether it's worth trying to repair and go through all of this work? Is there anything that I can look out for that tells me, better to walk away?
The partner who cheated needs to make very clear their commitment to the relationship and basically say, like, I want to be in this to heal with you. Like, I know that I want you and I've always wanted you.
Yeah.
It's not to say that couples can't reconcile with more ambivalence. It's just harder and messier and more confusing. So if your partner is making it clear, like, yes, we had a great relationship. My cheating is not a reflection of our great relationship.
Yeah.
And they might not know yet. I don't know why I did this. I don't know what was wrong with me. I don't know what came over me, but I know that I love you. I am so sorry. I take responsibility. I want to make this work. To me, that's like 90% of the prognosis. And the betrayed partner wants to make it work. And and there was enough of a strong foundation of a relationship that there's what to resuscitate. And this is where the ongoing work can come in. It's okay if a cheating partner, before doing their work and looking back at their history, says, well, the relationship was vulnerable, like I didn't know how to communicate, that like you weren't paying attention to me. They haven't yet learned what responsibility taking means. But if they are blaming the betrayed partner for everything, like you were so withholding, you were so this, you were so that, like what did you expect? That's a very bad sign.
Yes, right.
Around their capacity for responsibility taking and remorse and self-reflection. So to me, those are the two main criteria for what is workable with a cheating partner. For the betrayed partner, it's just the motivation to repair with this person. Do they see enough good in the relationship and in this person that it's worth putting in all the work? And I mean, I think that this is true whether they stay or whether they go, but a real belief in their resilience and in their ability to survive. And in the belief that they don't have to leave with a more guarded, closed up heart. That's the thing that we don't want to have happen because of trauma. I can't even tell you how many social media comments I get that are like, broken forever, I'll never find love again, like never trust again, like once they do this, it's over. And it's just it's like, that's just not a wise choice for living this one life that we have, and we don't have to do it that way. We will have, again, the links in the show notes, the links in the description. That's everything that I have for you today. Thank you so much. Thank you. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you for listening and supporting the show here on Patreon. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at SleepingAroundPod for updates, teasers, episode discussions, and more. This episode was produced by Alayna Joy and Danae Fender and edited by Corey Mosquita. See you next time, back here on the couch.